So thank you very much, everyone, for coming again to this webinar from the IOSH Swiss Network. We're trying a slightly different format. So before it was very much, you got an expert in and they talked about their subject and then there was time for a few questions at the end. But our network is full of so many experts that we would prefer to have a more discussion type approach, and we can all learn something from that. So it's great that today we've got 3 presentations from companies going to talk about I'm going to say it wrong again. So today is leading indicators, which was the one that everyone wanted to talk about last time as well. So they're going to present maybe 1 or 2 slides each, and then we can ask those people questions and then have a general discussion at the end. So that's the kind of format for today. So it's following on from the last one, which was lagging indicators.
Okay, so yeah, happy to share. So I'm just going to put up this one slide to show what we do. So the disclaimer up front is I'm not saying this is the best thing to do. It's just what we do. So it might give some ideas and some thoughts. And I'm just being open. This is a real sheet from one of our regions. Yeah, please don't use it against us. These are the real numbers. And what you see is a couple of lagging indicators at the top, and then most of it is leading indicators. And all I plan to do is just talk through what each row is. Some of them are obvious, some not so obvious. So what you have here are the different sites, so the country and site code. You have a total for the region, Asia Pacific, our Taste and Wellbeing division, and then you have the target for the year in the blue column. So we have targets for number of near misses reported. I think everyone understands that, and then EHS contacts. So for me, an EHS contact is very simple. We used to call it a safety contact, but we're now trying to encourage more around health and more around environment issues. And health is interesting, because there's a lot more on mental health at the moment. So, checking in on someone's mental health, then you could come under that heading. But they're mostly safety. Almost, I would say 99% of the ones we get are safety related. So that just means you have to talk to somebody. And let's say that the minimum is that managers should talk to their people about safety on a regular basis. On the more mature sites, you have is peer-to-peer, and the people are doing safety contacts with each other. So that's a safety observation and you're asking questions, understanding what's happening, looking for improvements, but also reinforcing positive behaviour. And we recommend that around 50% of our EHS contacts should be positive. It's not just about finding something wrong. Action completion, corrective and preventive actions. So we assume all sites have a plan. That's part of the rule. So we look at having more than 90% of actions completed on time. That's the that's the benchmark. So we see that as a leading indicator because they're actually doing something. It should improve safety. Training hours is not one of our global KPIs. So this region has decided to add it. And again, it's typical of Givaudan is that people like to do their own thing. It's very difficult to have a real corporate standard, but that's fine. They wanted to add that one, so they have. We then have a number of projects that have had attention in recent years, and of course, the projects are only worthwhile if you follow up on the actions. So we've asked them to draw this out, to pull this out, and really make sure the actions are getting some attention. So process risk assessment is still in the assessment phase. So this region is highlighted 32 assessments to be done across the 10 sites during the year. So this is the recognized high priority processes. So they've gone into the, if you like, an initial assessment, which are the processes that need this attention. And then they've identified 32 they want to do this year. And you can see they're lagging behind a bit, although it's green here. They've only done 3 in the first quarter, so I would say it's probably green is a bit optimistic. And And then because we had a focus on ergonomics and on workplace assessment, which is mostly around exposure and noise, but mostly chemical exposure monitoring, and looking at the risks in the practical way. So not just the risk analysis, but what really happens in the workplace. Are the procedures being followed? Is the PPE being used? So what's the reality as opposed to what's the theory of the risk assessment? So those are also the same as the kappa targets, but we wanted just to draw those out to make sure they were getting special attention. And again, this one, the exposure control project, that's not one that we have globally, but it's getting particular attention in the region at the moment, so they've added that. We've identified a number of high-profile materials that that are getting global attention, that we're trying to control better, so either eliminate or put in better controls across the business. So they've decided to pull that one out. So it's really the same or subset of the workplace assessment. Management system review. When we've done the audits, we're very bad at actually reviewing. In the PDCA cycle, we don't. We decide what to do and we do it, and then we don't go and check it was effective. So we're really trying to push the management review of our EHS management system. So again, they've put in 24 or a target of 24 reviews in the year, and they will track that. We ask all sites to do an EHS engagement event. I mean, typically that's it's a safety week, but it might only be 1, 2, or 3 days, and it's a way of bringing everyone together and doing something actively with the sites. Even stopping production to focus around health and safety, and to do it in a really engaging, interesting, fun way, to get lots of people involved. Obviously, it's been difficult in the last 12 months, but we're doing more and more of these remotely, or we're finding ways to do it in our factories, which are obviously still operating, where they can have these events without breaking the COVID rules. So there's some creative ideas coming in there as well. But this one is it's either 1 or 0 for each site, because they either do it or they don't, and they should all be 1 by the end of the year. The directives implementation is our audit program, so it's against our management system. So it's a percentage, and you can see in our legacy sites, our pre-existing sites, the scores are pretty good. That they've had audits, and then they've done self-assessments each year. They have an action plan, and they're working towards the 100%. And then you see some of our recent acquisitions. So Malaysia was a few years ago, so they have started to make progress. And then you see in a new site in India and one in Vietnam where they haven't started yet. We don't have a baseline, so that's still to come in, but we still put them in the table. The risk portfolio is a global system where we have 9 different risk categories we assess, and we do it per site and per category, and it's a way of deciding mostly where to put our capital investment, and being able to compare a risk on one site with another site and see where the highest priority is. But the plan is that once you have some of the red risks in the portfolio, they identify, these are the ones we want to move from red, orange into yellow or green, and they've identified 28 they want to work on, and that they're progressing. I'm sorry, 32 they're working on, 28 are already done. So actually they've had a very good start to the year. And then we have a model, an EHS excellence model for culture, and we asked the sites, having done the initial workshops, to do reassessments, and to put in also actions which tend to appear in this kappa list for improving the culture on site as well. So they're trying to to shift it step by step each year. It's not a very precise number. It's a lot of it is self-perception, but at least gives a sense of where do we want to be as a site and what do we need to do to get there. And you can see, I mean, pretty much this region is doing pretty well, and but you see there, with the acquisitions, this one, Malaysia, India, Vietnam, this is where we have more issues because they started from further behind. And some of the zeros just mean there's no baseline. It doesn't mean they're actually at zero, but they probably shouldn't be green. They're neither green nor red. We just haven't done it yet. So that was really just the snapshot into what we do. Any questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So you're talking about corrective preventive action, and it's just percentage complete, but not all actions are created equal. So some are more important than others. Some will obviously take a lot longer than others, and you know that from the beginning. So do you have a way of factoring that into your score?
Yeah, the action plan that's behind this is a lot more detailed. So this is 90% complete by the due date. So in the process of putting the plan together, they need to prioritize the actions. So the low priority ones will have a much longer due date, or they won't go in the plan. And the more difficult ones, like if it's 5 million capex, then the date would be appropriate to raising the capex, getting it approved, and implementing the project. So we expect them to use their judgment about both what's easy and what's high priority, and that is factored in there.
You don't get the end date shifting over time, and
well, no, then they miss the number because it's the original end date. So yeah, if they're over ambitious, then they shoot themselves in the foot on this number.
Okay.
But we expect them to do it properly, and we're trying to encourage the sites that it's, we don't expect you to do everything. As you said, not all actions are created equal. Do it properly. Put some thought into it and make sure you have the right actions in your plan, and that it's something that is achievable with the team you have.
But usually, just question. But usually the time completion of the CAPAs are managed by the site or defined or by the site leader, no? Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So it's agreement between business or corporate and site leadership team. Okay. So it's
so we do it on.
Should be reasonable.
So we have a we have a regional EHS director who coordinates this. But the accountability is with the site, supported by the EHS function. So the site director
because sometimes you need a capital investment, and this needs to be requested in terms of budgets. No?
Yeah, exactly. So I can't magic money out of thin air for them. So they have to take that.
I have just a question, maybe the frequency of reporting, if you do on an annually basis, or on a monthly base, or
monthly.
Okay, and that's for all the CAPAs, because I see that, for example, the cultural model assessment most probably something that you do once per year, no?
Yeah. Sorry. Yes.
There are some.
You're right. Yeah.
So it's a mix between annual and monthly, and then the second question is related to I see a lot of area, but your metrics are based on site or are divided by regions or by country? So how is the way to arrange your performance metrics?
It's by site. So for example, here you see 2 China sites.
Those are sites. Okay.
2 India, and there's another India here, one of the new acquisitions. So 3 in India. So it's by site.
Makes sense.
John, I have a question, if I may.
Yeah.
Okay. First of all, thank you for an excellent presentation. I really appreciate it. I'd like to I'd like to congratulate Givaudan on what they've done on this. I know the type of work that you've done, but I'd like to dive in a little bit into an area I know that you're passionate about, and I'd like to talk about safety culture, EHS culture.
Yeah.
And how did you go about, just in very, very brief terms, how did you go about building a KPI, a leading indicator for the safety culture? What was the process, and what did you come up with? I know what we're talking about now is how we monitor it, but I'm more concerned about the development of the key performance indicator and what sort of guidance we can share with others.
Okay, I'll try and do a very quick snapshot. I presented it at one of the meetings, the one we'd had at Nestle. But just in very quick terms, we decided to do our own model. We identified what were widely held to be the best sites in terms of safety culture. We did a diagonal cut of interviews to define that. We then tested it against 5 other sites. So we had 7 globally, different divisions, different sizes, different complexity, and created a final model that we could use with 12 different headings. We then created two measurement tools. One was a self-assessment of things that you could actually measure. So we look at even things like employee turnover versus the local norm. Also number of safety contacts, number of times the management of change process is used. So we looked at some things you could actually measure that give an indication of the culture. So if you don't use these processes, you pretty much have a poor culture. If you use them a lot, then that indicates it's probably quite good. So there's no precise number. So we did that pre-assessment of things, and then we ran a workshop with the leadership team, and we really then did another assessment based on their perception of what happened on site, their perception of the culture, again based around some structured questions in statements that came out of the original interviews and surveys. And the 2 of those things together gave a score. And in the workshop, the really interesting bit is where there's a difference. If the thing you measure indicates a poor culture, but the opinion is it's very good, then there's a really good rich ground for discussion. But anyway, the combined thing produced a score, and then we then asked them to do a self-assessment on their own each year to see what impact the action was having on the score. Now, we have run into a problem because the very best sites tend to mark themselves down because they know how good they could be and they're not there yet. And part of why they're excellent is because they see the potential for doing even better. The sites that have a very immature safety culture have no concept of how good they could be, so they tend to mark themselves up because their idea of what is really, really good is not as far away as it really is. They think it's just a little bit better. So we have this problem where everything kind of tends to the middle. So on this score, the score is between 1 and 5, and you can see here these are all 3 point something, just about, or around the middle. So we are reviewing that and seeing if we can do it a bit better and make it a little bit more of an audit tool. We don't want to lose the local ownership, but something where there's a more precise measurement or a more meaningful measurement, and then we can start to assess sites around a sort of, they're gold standard or are they just at bronze, so we're trying to find a better way of measuring it, but it gives an indication, and the change in the number is a better indication that the right things are happening.
Thank you, John. That was very helpful.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think, shall we move on to the next presentation, which, should we ask Richard, are you?
So that's actually hot out from the mold because I just presented it a few hours ago during our monthly HS performance review calls, whereby we go through our lessons learned, recognitions, and so on. And then part of it is looking at our numbers. So I'll just zoom in on those and starting actually with some of the lagging indicators that are considered potentially as leading, because we are looking at potentially severe incident, for example, near misses and observations. But I won't take too much time on this one. I just want to focus on this, and maybe if I go to presenting mode, hopefully you should see it better. Just need to change that. Here we go. So we have a program that we run called Operating Safely, with 4 parts around training, assessing risk and deploying controls, making sure that those controls are in place, and then having regular, let's say, reviews of the maturity of the program deployment. And though each and every site are assessed against these maturity levels, so that's what you see on the tables on the top right. So we have the current maturity level from foundation, demonstrating, performing. And there is even a fourth level, which is excelling, but we have no site in EME electrical, for example, reaching that level now, and what is the goal for each and every of the division. So what you see here is a split for the business by division, but you have the same type of representation by division with the list of sites. So you can see each and every site to which level they are. So obviously there are goals set for each of them, and this is something we are looking at over the course of the year. As part of this program, there are a certain number of specific indicators that we are looking at. First, we measure the number of workstations we have of our plants, and then we need to have for each and every of those workstations a workstation risk assessment completed, but as well a work instruction, standard work with the safety critical step identified within, meaning those tasks or activities within the standard work that needs to be done, let's say 100% correct each and every time. Typically, when you go through a process of, let's say, lockout, tag out, the verification of absence of energy would be considered as a safety critical step. So this is something we are measuring sites again. So how many workstations have a workstation risk assessment completed and a work instruction with safety critical steps. Then we are looking as well at closure rate on two types of findings, either regulatory findings or non-regulatory findings. So they may come from our internal audits, ISO audits. Those are the certain number of triggers for those actions. And then all other actions in general are looked at in terms of overdue actions. So again, we make a specific focus on ISO overdue actions, regulatory and non-regulatory. And so when we discuss with the site, so at a level down than the meeting I just had today, we're really going to the details of those open items, overdue. What are the challenges? How, I mean, is it related to the capex that they need to have, and so on and so forth. Then talking about the culture and promoting, I would say, safe behaviors and a positive safety culture, we have a program called Recognizing Our EHS Heroes. And we have two levels of recognition. The level 1 heroes are those individuals that, as part of your daily conversation, you will be providing them with immediate positive feedback. So they are reporting observations, they do their job well, and so on and so forth. So the manager will basically send them what we call internally an E-star. So not only they will have this direct feedback, but then there is a kind of formal acknowledgement of that positive reinforcement through a specific tool that we use. So we count those. And then we have the level 2 superheroes that are the individuals that goes above and beyond. So they really do things extra. They take like a specific problem that was raised at the plant, and they are the ones proposing the solutions. They are the ones involved in the deployment. It's not only considering their workstation, but it has some wider impact in the plant. So it's something that we recognize as well, and so we want to measure that particular topic. And then the last one you see on the right-hand side is what we call the LSR breaches. So we have kind of golden rules at Eaton that are called the life-saving rules. And any potential breach to such a rule is thoroughly investigated. So as soon as a site is reporting one of those potential SR breach, this is something that we track as well. For those ones, apart from I would say the middle and left, we have some specific targets on that. But for example, on heroes and superheroes, is just improving from the previous year. And there is no specific target on LSR breaches. It's something we just measure. Obviously, we want to have as less as possible, but it's just an indicator. And then when we were discussing before with John about those actions that are more important than others, and back to this life-saving rules. So we have specific, I would say, programs and elements associated to those 6 life-saving rule topics, so around electrical safety, confined space, fall protection, industrial truck, lockout, tagout, and machine guarding. And here we are tracking the results of the self-assessment or corporate assessments on those specific topics, and then the number of open tasks being overdue or not. So we make a specific follow-up on those actions that are generally critical and associated to life-saving activities or requirements. I skip this one, which is related to environment, and then the two last, but I only show this one, is about specific program we have on machine guarding and on electrical testers remediation. So here we have divided all of our equipment into 3 groups: high priority, medium priority, and low priority. And we are tracking how far we are in our program of remediating those machines based on our internal standards. So we have the overall picture and then the yearly planning. So each and every year, based on the CapEx that the sites are allocated, we visualize basically from a database we use what are the machines or electrical testers that are planned to be remediated during the year. And then we track, obviously, that remediation activity across the entire year. So again, these are real numbers, such as John. But yeah, so it's tracked on or measured on a monthly basis. There are, I would say, some changes year over year, depending on the focus. So some of them are removed and new ones are popping up. And there are as well some site-specific indicators that we don't see, we don't escalate in this division or business calls, but it's tracked when we do the divisional calls. So for example, we are looking at risk reduction, we are looking at training, we are looking at the number of non-routine risk assessments we are performing, and so on and so forth. That's basically it for me.
Thank you very much. Have any questions? Once again, I have a question. I thought it was fascinating, Richard. Thank you for that. So your level 2, level 1 heroes, could you say a bit more about how you decide, how you allocate people this level? Who does it? Is that subjective at all? And then does it feed into some sort of league table where you have people's names written on it? And how do you manage?
I'll answer the first one actually immediately, just going on the top of the. Oh, here is one. So these people. So in the process of nominating a level 2 superhero, so it's the sites that are deciding on the people they want to propose as a superhero, and so I say the level 1 heroes are really the day-to-day recognition. It can be done by their supervisor, it can be done by the HS manager. What we just count at the end of the month is the number of those E-stars. So that's really the formal acknowledgement of that recognition for each and every of them. And then so generally what the sites are doing, they are looking at all the heroes they had during the month. And if there is one or several of them that are eligible, so we have criteria for the superheroes, they basically submit the superhero nomination at division level. And so there is a panel of people reviewing those proposals. Generally, that's the ops director, operations director for the division. Then the EHS reporting to that division. And then potentially often the HR person. So these people will review the nomination, so that ensure a bit of consistency within the division, and then we also make sure that we have as well consistency across the divisions. And then so they review the cases, they validate or not, and each and every of those validated superheroes, so they receive an E-star with points from the operations director. So it means it's a financial incentive that they receive from I would say the top operational person within the division. And then so they are presented during our monthly call to advertise a bit further. So the ops director will say a few words on it. Generally, the operator is invited to the call together with the site manager. I mean, the site manager are in the call by default, but we invite the individual, so he will receive direct recognition from the operations director during those calls.
Okay. so when you're counting the number of stars they've got, is there some sort of league table, and who has, is that known to people? Do they know that you know, I'm third from the top and the person at the top is John?
Yeah, no, there is no league. I mean, they are recognized for the division, right? But we don't say here's the top one or so. So you have, you are a superhero or not, basically. But there is no like ranking within the superheroes.
Yeah.
But do you have an incentive program for the people that are recognized?
Yeah, so they will receive, as I said, they will what we call E-Star wish points, and those points basically are financial.
Okay, so they're payout.
And we have 2 levels for them, what we call above and beyond 1 or above and beyond 2. So I would say the best one will receive the highest level of recognition within those 2 levels. So a bit more money.
How do you manage this one to pay out based on this recognition? Because from our experience, there is some type issue in certain country to pay based on recognition at work, and there is also different way to manage this recognition. So it's something that is managed at global level or every countryside, you know, because there are some involvement also the human resource in this sense.
Yeah. So I mean, for example, in Germany, the Work Council for the entire country never accepted the E-Star program.
I was mainly talking about Germany. Yeah.
So we had to find our way, basically, to be able still to recognize people in Germany. So we did it, but slightly differently.
Right? You experience difference between country to country about the recognition program.
Yeah. And there are as well some people that are not really at ease of being, you know, appearing in a large group of people in a meeting. So sometimes people say, yeah, I did my job. I mean, I did the things and so on, but I don't want to be recognized in public, let's say. So we will not present that, for example, but they will still receive the incentive. So we are flexible in the program somehow, and we need to.
Thank you for clarification.
Yeah, that kind of, I think what Alberto was sharing with you kind of leads me a little bit in direction. First of all, thank you for an excellent presentation as well. I think, you know, this whole idea of a webinar where we can share, where we can discuss, it's sort of like in an academic forum. I really enjoy the intellectual stimulation. How do you avoid, Richard, and maybe you've answered it, and if you have, just tell me, how do you avoid the idea with this recognition of winners and losers? Because I think, and I guess we're off the track a little bit as far as key performance indicators, but I'm very concerned about people, the person you said, well, I don't want to be recognized, I'm shy about this kind of thing. You just mentioned it a few minutes ago. How do you deal? You know, it would be great if everybody could be a superhero and everybody could be a winner, but that's not the case. So how do you make sure that everyone is on the train in this direction of trying to improve this kind of thing?
Yeah, what I would say first is that, again, if I go back to here, if you look into the numbers, not everyone yet is on the train, as you said. So I mean, it's really not only a country but a side-by-side approach. So we have to tailor often the program to really suit to the existing site culture, either because of, let's say, just general maturity of the plant itself or the country culture related to recognition. And generally speaking, for example, it's easier in the southern country than in the Nordic countries, as a very rough split, you know. So it's a lot of discussions with the plant managers, for example, to make sure first, as you said, that no one is really feeling that they are losers. So insisting at the start really much on the immediate positive recognition. So this level 1 hero, I would say immediate feedback that we give to individuals, which is really for me the basis of it. And once they are mature in that process of regularly recognizing positive behaviors, safe behaviors, and not only, as I think we also mentioned during John's presentation, going to people when they do the things wrong. So these EHS contacts also focusing on positive reinforcement. So when all of this is well set, then generally we move to this second level of the level 2 recognition, where the site is more mature. And those recognitions is really see as just, we have winners and there is no losers, right? It's just the positive thing.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, just shall we move quickly on to Alberto, if I make you a co-host?
So I'm just presenting the corporate leading indicator, because in DuPont we have there is several competency, and every competency has a different. So they give to the site different KPI, and so performance indicators specific for process safety, fire safety, emergency response, electrical safety. So right now we today I just want to report the corporate, so the one that goes to from site to the business to the corporate level, which are the one that are commonly let's say agreed between site and business and corporate. There is all additional leading indicator which are specific for competency, but this will not be present today by me. So just quickly, as we mentioned already last time, so that's what we think at DuPont. So the lagging and leading indicator are really strict connect, and a robust lagging system can support and drive the leading performance by reducing the injuries. There is a strong correlation between CAPAs and injury reduction, and there is several. We see really. And we also experience, and then maybe I can go to some numbers and some experience and how we have implemented the leading indicator between and how the implementation of the leading indicator can really reduce the total recordable incident rate and the lagging performance. Just to quickly go as other friends has reported. So those are the leading indicator which are reported from the site to the corporate. So I didn't put the real number because, but I just give a quickly introduction of the performance of the indicator that we report at corporate level. So as John also which also we report the high potential near miss, the first party audit, which is basically a self-assessment, and we have to report the completeness of the first party audit in accordance with the site schedule. We keep and we request to report the training program, so the completeness of the training program from each site and for all the resources that are on site. Of course, the benefit of the training program is to have a more skilled person and performing the work on site. We also report recognition, so every site has freedom to define a recognition program for the operator, for the engineering team, and also for the site leadership team as well. So there is different. Of course, there are some guidelines, and we have some DuPont internal procedure, but every site is different. Every site leader is accountable of defining the recognition program for each site. This is due to the fact that we see a lot of difference between each site, and so it's been really difficult at corporate level to define recognition program which might apply for all the site and for all the business. Another important leading indicator that we track is the job cycle checks. So we request to, which is basically a methodology to look at the ability and the skills of the people that are performing the work on site. Another important indicator that I guess is one of the most where we see a really improvement is really leading the performance on site is the commitment and the commitment and the accountability of the leadership team. So the leader standard work is basically how much time we are just reporting how much time the site leader, so the plant manager, is supporting the site with field tour or with adequate training and adequate meetings. So this is we see that it's quite important to reduce the total recordable incident rate and also the performance side. Another important leading indicator that we request to report the corporate climate is the management of change, specific for personnel. So we want to be sure that people that are assigned to new activity or new task has been trained and have the right expertise to perform the task. This is really, especially for process safety incident, is something that we have been, since we start tracking this indicator and targeting the 10% of decrease from the previous year, we see really a benefit on the number of PSM incident and the non-related PSM incident that we have on site. Another important indicator that we usually report and we request to report is specific for contractor. So there are, and those are specific for high hazard, what we call basically the life safety rules and the high hazard, high risk activity. So hot work, electrical hazard, arc flash activity, working aid, and so on. So all those activities which we define high risk activity, specific for contractor, has been, we have created a specific leading indicator because based on our experience, contractor has been, the contractor safety has been an issue at site, especially due to the fact that in the last 15 years, the number of people that are working in our site has been between DuPonters and contractor has been, of course, has been changed, and we have more contractor working in our site than before. So we have put on ice, and we have start having some specific leading indicator for contractor safety. Then here a quickly overview of CAPAs, so completed and overdue CAPAs. Again, those are based on the second partiality, so on the second and third partiality. So those are the result of the findings. And usually there is an agreement between the site leadership team and the corporate resource in terms of completion date. And of course, we track the completion of the work, and if there is any overdue. The findings, of course, are structured, I guess, as most of our of your company. So with the finding different type of finding, but also regulatory and policy findings. So those are something also that we track as a different type of findings and encompass. And then there is specific leading metrics for occupational hygiene, so exposure assessment, medical surveillance examination, specific training related to the occupational hygiene and also economics. Then, of course, as I mentioned before, tracking audit finding to closure, so open, overdue, and there is also some specific sample that we collect and we monitor for air, biological, and specific for the occupation, specific for occupational hygiene. Quickly, we have a specific, as I mentioned before, a program for contractor safety with some target and some performance that goes into a tools, and there is basically a point system which give us every month the status of the contractor safety. So we have a specific program that we are managing that every site is managing based on the DuPont policy requirements and DuPont policy specific for contractor. So every month we report and we ask to report if the leading indicator is still safe, unsafe, or dangerous. And so based on the result of every month, we request to have corrective action or we implement a corrective action on sites. Just quickly, I forget to tell you, so of course, these indicators are reported monthly base, except someone that needs to be reported on an annually base. And we have a target system, and we have a targeting system of these metrics, which are based on the previous year reporting system, and we request usually a 10% of decrease of the performance from the previous year's end. So it's a continuous improvement that we usually require to the site. I just want to have two additional routine and two additional leading indicator that we implement recently based on the result of the impact survey. So every year, in order to assess the safety culture of the site and of the business and corporate, we launch every year an impact survey specific for EHS, where we have several questions and we try to line up the safety culture in the site. Of course, it's not perfect tools, but every year we implement, and the question that we ask to the site and all the employees is usually the request to reply to the impact surveys. We have usually between 78% of response, so it's quite good for a big organization, I guess. What we implement recently has been the routine and non-routine task indicator. So based on some background and based on some statement that we got from the site. So we saw that 40% of the recordable injuries were not prevented by standard operating procedures. So, and we have some injuries that were relatively small, but were done during a routine task. So, based on the fact that recordable injuries were not prevented by SOP, we try to implement a specific way to link the injuries and to see how we can influence the injuries during the routine and non-routine tasks. So basically, we come up with two additional leading indicators for the site, one specific for routine and another one specific for non-routine. So the routine indicator is basically looking at how many procedure has been correctly followed during the site activity in regards to the total number of SOP audited. So we have an internal process of auditing. So the first party audit program where we auditing also the internal procedure. So we see that basically by looking at this performance indicator, we can understand if it's the SOP, so the standard operating procedure is still aligned with the risk and the hazard that we have at site, the people and the operator are exposed during the activity. Then there is another non-routine task indicator that we implement just at the end of 2019, which is really related, also similar to the previous one, is specific for the non-routine activity. So where we need to perform JSA, so job safety analysis. So we see the number of JSA identified and the number of JSA that has been audited during the permit work or during a permit work system or during an activity that is performed on site. So again, also with this indicator, we see and we try to prevent injuries, serious injuries by looking at the compliance, or at the consistency and also the qualification of the permit initiator that is doing the JSA, or the procedure that is the internal procedure that is implemented on site that needs to be followed by the operators. So those are two additional indicators that we implement in end of 2019. Unfortunately, with the COVID, the number of procedure and JSA that has been audited has been reduced. So it's been really difficult to see how this new task indicator can influence and may influence the total recordable incident rate, so the number of incidents that we have at site. So I guess it might be easier to wait once the COVID is over, and when we can have a baseline, and we can, let's say, of course, make a right comparison and to see if those two new indicators are reducing and are supporting the incident rate at site. Just what I want to share with you based on the experience and what we see that is really supporting the as a leading indicator the total recordable incident rate, and so basically the number of incidents that we see at site is that's really where I'm really we want to. I guess DuPont is focusing really and pay a lot of attention is the commitment and accountability of the leadership team. So we see that the influence of the leadership is a key element because those are people that are followed at site and are the key person that can influence the safety culture on site. So by implementing and increasing the leader, one of the leading indicators that I was mentioning before, so the leader standard works. So by including additional line walls, coach session, engagement from the site leadership team, we see that those are usually reducing the unsafe condition and the injury at site. So the increasing of these, so of the hours that every day the site leadership can let's say spend on site has been really beneficial for the performance of each site. That's what I have for today.
Thank you very much, Alberto. Do you know, you had so much information in there. I'm looking forward to going back through the video and reading all those slides because you obviously do an enormous amount of work at DuPont. Do we have some questions for Alberto?
Yeah, Alberto, this is Richard. Just one question regarding your routine and non-routine task indicators. And you were showing a couple of actions to work on this. So what is the current evolution on those?
Yeah, we saw that usually the result of this task indicator for routine and non-routine performance has been basically the review or readjustment of some SOP or readjustment of the JSA, and so also the evaluation of the competency of the people that are performing the JSA. So we are basically using this, and the site are usually basically using this KPI for performance indicator to basically to adjust the internal procedure and the qualification and the competency of the operator. So for example, for a non-routine, we have of course some target for this one. We gave some target. For example, when we don't meet, a site does not meet a non-routine and the non-routine task indicator, we usually the CAPAs that pop ups after this activity is additional training for the operator that are responsible of EHS designated person that are responsible to approve the JSA or to work on the JSA. So I guess it's a mix of action that so routine is basically focusing on the internal procedure and update of or consistency of the internal procedure. The non-routine is basically really effective on the evaluation of the qualification of the operator and response supervisor on site. I don't know if I've been able to give more indication.
Alberto, this is Fred. May I ask you, very impressive set of indicators. When it comes to completion of actions and how you correlate that with injury reduction, do you have also, when you, about this specific process, do you have anything about detecting a reoccurrence, which was supposed to be treated by an action which has been closed, but anyhow we had a reoccurrence?
Yeah, this is mainly, you might talk about incident in this case, no?
Yeah, true.
Yeah, usually, I have to admit, this is usually difficult to evaluate by looking at the performance metric, but this usually can pop up during an incident investigation or an injuries investigation. So I personally see that the performance can, the leading indicator can give you which are the weakness of a site and which are the action that needs to be arranged for a site to improve the lagging indicator. But unless we don't go through a root cause and incident investigation, we're not able to get conclusion by this leading indicator. So the root cause analysis should be the result of this leading indicator should be mainly addressed by, from experience, from DuPont experience, should be addressed by an incident investigation, where you can really understand for each specific case what has been the root cause and the factor the key element that has been triggered the incident, triggered the incident. I don't know if you have different experience, Frederick, or
no. I mean, I was thinking about, for Lafarge's team we have silo cleaning, which is a very hazardous operation, and we had some major incident with fatalities, and then we created a handbook or something, explaining how to do silo cleaning, and some months ago or years ago, then we had reoccurrences. So of course it's very important to have a leading indicator looking at action plan closure, but next step ideally would be to correlate this with recurrence, so linked to the action, but it's probably impossible to set in place. More wish.
Alberto, I have two questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead. I just want to reply to Freddie. So there is too many, from our experience, usually in an incident, we call this wishes factor. So there is really a lot of factors that can play a role in an incident, like especially for high hazard activities. So which most probably might be linked to several leading indicators, which can be training, can be your internal procedure, if it's adequate, the qualification of or the completeness of the JSA,
the proper implementation and all that.
So
it's true.
And this can be also, I guess, from my experience, can be also clarified by an incident investigation, because there are several factors that can play an important role on an incident. Sorry, go ahead.
Hello, great, thanks.
Alberto, I have two questions. Alison, do we have time for two questions? I realize the clock is ticking.
Sorry.
You're muted, Alison.
Go for it, David.
I have time.
Okay. First of all, Alberto, thank you. All three of these all three of these interventions are exciting, and I think they're very much thought-provoking. And they raise questions, I think, that we should explore on a larger scale at some point, because I think the whole package of leading and lagging indicators is interesting. Alberto, the first question I have is, you've indicated that a high potential near miss is a leading indicator. And I'm wondering I'm wondering the thought behind that being a leading indicator. That's my first question.
I'll notice as well. Yeah.
I'll let you answer, and then I'll come back to the second question.
Yeah, I guess that sometimes that is a little bit. Sometimes you can report. I see also companies that are reporting this as a lagging indicator. Unfortunately, so I guess that this is as DuPont we see as a way to usually during let's say the high performance. Let's start from the point that high potential near miss in DuPont is requesting incident investigation, and is requesting basically evaluation of the root cause and all the causes that are brought to the incident. So that's why we see and we report as a leading indicator, because we think that this is the reduced number of high potential and near miss usually is something that we do not report as a lagging indicator, but it drives the let's say the quality of the work that are performed on site, and also the competency of the people that are doing activity on site. So I guess there are strictly connect between so the performance training and findings are usually strictly connect between each other and that's why we think that this should be better report as a leading indicator.
Okay, thank you.
Because usually it requests assessment of the hazard and what has been the root cause of this incident.
Okay, that's very interesting, and obviously there's a thin line between
there is from my experience, this sometimes is also reported by as a lagging indicator. Certain company we see as a really driven factor that drives the completeness of the activity, the qualification of the personnel that are at site, and usually a reduced number of high potential near miss give us the quality of the work that is done by the EHS manager.
Thank you. The second question I'd like to ask is relating to the routine versus non-routine tasks.
Yeah.
And you talk about the use of the job safety analysis, whether it's robust enough. Do I understand in the company's philosophy that you're not doing risk assessments as much as you're doing job safety analysis at a certain level? Because you're dealing with hazard identification and job safety analysis. And I understand that, but I also see at the same time, what I've experienced, especially recently, is there is a value of everyone virtually being able to do a certain level of risk assessment, maybe not to the certain level that we may be doing it in this group. But job safety analysis is interesting, but I'm missing this whole thing about risk assessment here. Could you give me a little more thoughts on that?
Yes. So, of course, the JSA is specific for the non-routine activity that we have at site, and usually whatever is first of all, we are production. So basically, we are discussing about production plans. So where most of the activity are defined as a routine, and basically every routine is routine activity is based on a process hazard analysis. So we do specific and the procedure that we usually we define at site our base as and are coming from the results of the hazard analysis. So of course, the non-routine activity is requesting an additional step from the risk assessment, because there are some activity that should be assessed by the supervisor or by people that are competent, have competency, that are qualified to perform and assess the non-routine activity. So JSA, so the job safety analysis is I would say is an additional activity on the process hazard analysis that we perform on site. So it's not so basically we have, for the routine and also the non-routine activity, we have standard process hazard analysis that we perform on site for every activity that reduce the risk, but there is an additional step that is requested to be done on site specific for the task and for the non-routine task. That's why we have a JSA. Usually the JSA is needed for the high risk activity where we request a permit, where the supervisor should define the mitigation measure to be placed and the PPE that needs to be used for the operator that is performing the non-routine activity.
Thank you, Alberto.
So we do process hazard analysis, and that's the base of our activity on site.
You're on mute, Alison.
I am again, aren't I? I can see that Nico has raised his hand. So shall we make this the last question? Go for it, Nico.
Thank you very much. Very quickly, and good morning from Buenos Aires. So the question was, I haven't seen, or maybe I missed it. I wanted to know if you collect information on the cost of accidents, days missed and so on, if you put a monetary tag to it, and that, you know, if there is any reason why it's not done. Thank you.
What I can share is that we use the cost value for the incident, mainly for the incident, for the classification of the incident. So, so basically, in DuPont we have a different level of incident, tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3, and one of the factors that is which is the base of classification is the cost and the direct cost to the site, to the production, or to the operator. Of course, that's only one of the factors of classifying the incident. There is also other factors that go into the classification, but the cost, the EHS costs usually are in the definition and in the classification of the incident. How those are really effective and can drive maybe the work on site, or additional evaluation or assessment from business and corporate. We never link, I have to admit, we never link those costs to any improvement program or continuous improvement program that can reduce the cost of the impact. Usually by reducing the total recordable incident rate, you also reduce the cost of the operational cost and the business interruption or the damage of your asset on site. Then how to link together is a good point. We don't have a proper tool, or we never done this connection, but for sure would be something important to I don't have a full answer, sorry.
No, it's just a paradox, isn't it? That the better we do health and safety, the lower the cost, and then the less value has the department per se. So that's why I always say, you know, if we have a monetary amount, this is what it costed. And if we know 2 to 1 that this is what we saved, then we can offer those numbers, and quantifying for certain managers is important. But yeah, no, very interesting. Thank you so much.
No, we don't link to the cost value this activity. No, that's, I don't know if for the company as to what are doing other company, but we don't link this.
As an example, for Lafarge Holcim, we do that for security incident, but it's very, very useful for us to promote the benefits from the function, basically. Yeah.
Perhaps we could just ask quickly, Richard and John, do you link costs?
Actually not. It was in the past, but actually kind of severity rate or cost, they just disappeared from our indicators. We don't look at that anymore.
Okay, and John?
Yeah, we include it in what we call our event assessment matrix, and not for the injuries, but for like property damage or environmental cleanup. You know, those sort of things would come in, but we don't put a price on an injury, no, or a cost on an injury.
But we do also as an insurance activity. So for during the third party audit, for insurance audit, we do as a business interruption and property damage, but not as a EHS KPI or EHS that indicator, because it's really difficult, I guess, to link together. But yeah, there might be a good idea that coming from this group.
Thank you, everyone. That's probably a good place to stop. Thank you particularly to Richard, Alberto, and John for presenting what your companies are doing. Really fascinating discussion, and I shall process it, edit it, and send it out to everyone. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining.
Hey, you're welcome. Very interesting.
Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot for the presentation and the questions. Bye.
Bye, everyone.